담배 최천인 제백의 값을라 드는 또 드는 뇌기 卷 숨다 잘 거봐 송아래 드는 다치는 좀 마시 하고가 유지래 드는 뒤 나네 뇌기 卷 숨진 나네 뇌기 卷 타마데 단도 개체시의 녀몽 단데 두신답의 卷 숨데 드는 또 드는 담배 최 년발라 드는 개체시의 칸레스나 드는 거랑 삼밤 듬바데 드는 개체부레 대인도 드는 삼바 전주초도 셈게네 드는 담배 최 드는 예야티 드는 다가서 올해 최천이 제백의 값속이다 또 생이다 마소는 듣고 요래 대송자 담제가 삼바 전주초도 셈게네 드는 담배 최 예스 냠버쇼
In order for one to be able to listen to the Dharma properly, one should be free of the three inappropriate conditions or the three flaws of being the proper three flaws that stains from being the proper vessel or container for the teaching, which you may know. Among these, most important is one as a vessel for the Dharma is not stained by conflicting emotional patterns as one is receiving the teachings. So, in order to be free from such, one must arouse the appropriate motivation. And the appropriate motivation is generating the mind of awakening, which is for the benefit and experience of complete awakening of one and all beings. For that very purpose, one is receiving the teachings. So in this way, His Eminence would like to encourage everyone to arouse such attitude or motivation.
텐데스레 테니 다 테니 셰셰게 최티 테니 다자웨 근다고 다 가서 그래 다 롭스 진다고 셰바나 시레 테니 조그 산지 좀 된데게 자웨게 산지 좀 된데 그 공게 담배 최지 코도 거르웨게 값술라 테니 베나 심체기 왕보다 튼백의 고네 데네 추 데네 카시 베나다 베나 장든당 예든스제네 예와 책이요레스 디 간데스제네 책이요레스나 베나 간사키 데네 바로보 두제기 로단 300의 고네 데네 디 고고요레 마도 베나다 나란서도 마소나티 베나 룩스암 팀드라보지 tene tende di gane china chembare di gane machina mandibare searndabo tende ke kasore pachik jeje chigri da tende ke tone mares bena sanje ke singe the top killer tuji chembodan dambasdu kanse ke yorasana kansa ke wangbu ke joyodan tumbachi ke gone chösung ke yeba sonza tene kashi tene 장든 dardo 카시 녜된다도 되는 다가는 신게텔은 난세게 예와 체바이나 되는 카시 덴버로 공부승에 소리 된대게 난세게 예와 망보여 그래서 너나 장된다 녜된세도 장된세야데 가르승게 요르세나 빼나 코랑기 갑대게 코랑 거바단 뛰네 강인바 송바데 하고송아 가르인바 송바데라 되네 장된세게 요르 디타직 도기 타도기 되인베 캬바요 말해 녜든 세야데 간세가 요르세나 모네게 다코라이 가서고로 양타베게 데네 네루암 타르도게 네루 간이 임바 템바테 하고서 대체도 되네 장도다 녜든스는 야와 텐데스 체가요 이나야 장도라 때네 녜든 그 똑베게 람레 이나야 되네 장도다 녜든스 야와 체급에 좀 된다 텐데스 체가요 대손자 되네 가시에게 텐데스 야와 체 마톱도 되네 산제 그 깔라양 가신 간단라보다 초진에 텐데스 초진에 마송반다고 텐데게 하고마고 받을 용구여한테 가르세나 되네 장에게 야와의 체톱 마톱당 되네 텐델 때네 용구여라서 공부 간로 공부 공시다 공제 망부여라스 산지가 다 연된 텐들어 봐 텐데스 인도 되네 다르게 시작돼 녜든스도 되네 오늘 타르도기 내로 당 간세오라 나란서 조그 산지 좀 된데기 가세오라 타르도기 나란서 똑자기 오늘 간인 받을 때문에 대월식 베닝 부담부터레스
When the Buddha turned the various wheels of the teachings, what had been taken into account is the varieties of mental capacities or faculties of beings, in accordance with what was necessary to meet the needs of various kinds of faculties or mental capacities the teaching was presented. And based on that, the teaching needed to be presented from what is known as in Tibetan, from the Jamgön point of view, Jamgön, for those of you interested, Jamgön, and which is
갑텔라 코라 장도세고베 좀 센터 된다디 장부기 된스게 열었어. 디스디 녜베 된 말에 갑텔라 니수 가리임 바디 그 처음에 돼.
Jamgön, which literally means straightforward or true meaning, and based on the particular time, what is true, what is straightforward, based on the particular moment or time. So from that point of view, it's a relative. What is true and appropriate at only a particular given time is relative. And in accordance with experience, perception of people, and the perception and experience that are relevant at the time they're experiencing. True and straightforward at the time people are having such experiences. And so on the basis of that, and then the other aspect of the teaching is based on what is known as nge tön in Tibetan. Nge meaning certain and tön is meaning. Certain meaning or absolute meaning. And based on what is true and fundamental nature of things. Not the meaning and the reality only at a given time. That could change. But what is the fundamental, unconditioned nature of things? And so, there is no phenomena, no experiences that takes outside of either of these two. Conditional experience or unconditional experience of world. So conditional meaning and unconditional meaning in that sense too. And the classification of these Jamgön conditional meaning or meaning given a certain time, circumstance, context, or what is ngeten, which is the absolute meaning, therefore the nature of phenomena. This classification is only necessary to address the different mental faculties of beings. For one, it's not because the things are strictly divided in these ways. And the teachings of the Buddha is not a set of rules or is a created law in that sense. Some rules or law or regulations that are put together, certain sort of code that are put together. And with these understandings, then one may begin to appreciate the vastness or the depth of the wisdom of the Buddha, what it means to have become a Buddha. And being able to address in accordance with the mental capacities of faculties of beings. And being able to address from the point of view of absolute nature of things, rather than based on preferred views, or certain just set of rules. So it is important to understand that the Dharma is free of being a set of rules that is being passed on based on authority, based on the truth of the meaning. If there isn't proper understanding why the teaching is taught from the point of view of the conditional meaning, which is based on what people can understand on a relative or given time, and also that the meaning of the teaching goes beyond that. That is absolute meaning. And then through the understanding of conditioned meaning or the relative meaning, that one can understand the absolute meaning. And therefore, that in this case, Jamgön and Ngeten also is not in contradiction with each other. If there isn't the understanding why it is presented in this way, then there would always be the problem seeing contradiction. On the one hand, the teaching of the Buddha says this. On the other hand, it is said this way. But there isn't a contradiction at all.
Tindes re te sonza tene tindes re tene thari tati tandati ngedo ki bena thatuki tene ta change ni su yores te indu tene thari ki shebra chawe ki chöti tene bena ngedön ki tene ngune ki chödres kana resena ngedön ki chöti yimbe jumsen ti kara resena thardu bena yang thakbe thardugi da khasa gore neluam tene thardugi tawati yang banati res togjet togjut togbar chawat tene matse beke bena te togbar cheballa bena ngone ngondu churianda boti tene dewarshik beke ningbo ngondu churkugo yores te imba sonzan tela tene kathamade tene ngedöngi tene yimbe 좀 센트 된다 테레스 대원도 줄발라 되는 람 장도연다 되는 남면도 송요레스 람 귀찮네 이나영 원도 줄주 대 강원도 주고 요라서나 대월식 백이 닝보도 원도 줄고 요가 손자 녀던스 제네레스
The particular teaching that His Eminence is conducting this time is as we have discussed yesterday, is based on absolute meaning or certain meaning from the Ngedun point of view, which is based on the final turning of the wheel of the Dharma, and absolute meaning. The reason for saying absolute meaning or Ngedun is because we are talking about what is the absolute or essential nature of things, or essential nature of our existence. And that is, the ground is recognizing of Buddha nature. And Buddha nature is not a conditioned reality, and so therefore absolute meaning. It is not a relative reality. So from that point of view, absolute meaning or meaning of certainty. And in order to recognize, realize absolute meaning or experience of the unfolding of Buddha nature completely, as far as the process or the path is concerned, then the path could be from the Jamgön, a condition meaning point of view, relative meaning point of view. It could be from absolute meaning point of view too.
This one's the Ngedun race. Then Matse Bege, Bena, then the worship Bege, Ningbuti, Yobati, Bena Sosuge, then Nelu de Hayan Tabachi Komatoba Yina, then Hamagoba Chene, then Lam Mangbuchi journey, Nananso journey, then it Sanjig combined the Druba in Sena, then Bena Sosuge, then it but the Casagore Tarang Bushivichil Chine, then a Kava, Rogugoya, Kava, Slev Guguya, Hamago, and Double Chick, they will chug yours. Matse Beke, did some Jim Matse Beke, Bena, Lambda, which is a Jamba in a young, Bena, Lamti, so, then she, Tawa La, then a Tawa gig, then a Tawa gig, then a Papa Kaim, but the Lam Jabne, then a Tartun Rebel talk of yours. This one's then a Deshik Ningbo de Meva Chiki, then a Lam the Jan de Gina, then a Tawa de la Pub said, Tawa de la Pabia Kaya Yomalis. Carrera Senata, Chirurg Churt Hamje, Madrubare, Tongbani, then a Churt Hamje, Casegore, then a Yomaris Chebe, Chebe T, Taduk Tawa de la Pabarbes, and Taduk Tawa de la Pabamaris. Ankosoma, Chirurg Churt de Ranshim, Madruba Tongbani de la Pabia T, then a Tikora. Bena Casagore tap double cherry, till a dene nangis semki, Nelu to Dr. Chebek, Teremado, Tardu get Tawa Yan Tawati Khanesena, Sem Korangiam, the Orshik be Ningbuti Korangi, Nelu take a Tamjela Machaba Meba, tell dene Tawasigiores. This one's a tea nature de Hamagona and the Tawa Yomar, Tawa Mena Lam Yungumare. She. Mena Lam Yungumar, Lam Men and Drevo Yungumaris. This is a Tamje to Mendavan to Yores. Tell a Dene, the Shing Buto, Bena, Simja Tamjela Yubato, Goyade, the Hakobayana, the Shing Yingbu Nelu, Ha Magonaya, the Shing Benelu Kain, but tea, Yantak Betawa, the Tamjel Tabiores. Manaz Tanda Tawa say at the Tissiores. Nanki Tawa the Chill Jergiorema, the cheek Tawal Dene, then a Bena Tawa say at the Chit and Pavia Marava, Kunzub them but then Pavia Zamjimari, Tundum them but then Pabuyores.
The teaching is concerning absolute meaning, in that it deals with understanding and recognizing of inherent potential, Buddha nature. Unless one has some understanding and some recognition of what Buddha nature is, and how that is one's inherent nature, then one's involvement in the practice of the Dharma couldn't lead to a practical experience of fruition. For instance, it's like you have a sense of the need to take a journey, and you went a lot. But even though you did a lot of going, yet you didn't know where you're supposed to get. So it would be, without some understanding and recognition of Buddha nature, whole journey of the practice of the Dharma would be similar to taking a journey and doing a lot of going, but not knowing where you're going. And it is obvious, simply going does not mean getting to where you're going. Then, from the point of view of the practice of a path, what is emphasized often is, in order to follow the path, we must first establish the ground for the path, which is to say, establish the view for the path. Based on that view, then one follows the path. And again, without the proper ground for the path or the proper view for the path, there is no following of path. No matter what in the name of practices and path, but there is no following of path. What makes one practically following a path is when the view that goes along with the practice is established first. And following practice in accordance with the view, then that's following of a path.
다시 드버 예단 트라베가 따와도 tum비가 남주요 말이스. 아 통야 여바 지가 지기도 삼바지다 나란도 지기 여 삼바지는 요레스.
So simply having the satisfaction or having the notion that one is doing something, practicing path, the satisfaction of practicing a path, and simply having the satisfaction and the notion of getting somewhere is not sufficient. It is not necessarily following practice and following path. If one is following practice and following the path properly, then first the view that goes along with it must be established. It is not enough that simply one is doing something.
데네 따와티 제부기 칭이레스. 데네 따와세 고베 좀든 제부 마도 파돌라 따와레스. 모네 따와티 제부 코랑게 니루 카인 바더바스. 디똑 바더는 제부 스타브레스.
When we are following the path of the Dharma, until we have realized the path, we have the view that is in accordance with the path. When we have experienced the realization of the path, the view is the fruition. So, which is another way of saying that without the view, there is no experience of fruition. And when we are working with the nature of things or trying to understand the nature of things, simply being able to say, externally all things are uncompounded, all things lack true existence, and so forth, simply being able to say and make that kind of statement about external phenomena is not establishing complete proper view. That is only a method to be able to establish absolute view. Absolute view is a recognition of Buddha nature, and recognition of Buddha nature to the extent that how Buddha nature pervades all phenomena, pervades all experiences.
this ti indu this sonza jumsen tela tene ane tanda ti dewarshik bege ningbo ti tene sosugi jula yeba hakowa ti tene pena tawe기 촌에 차샤바 이나 인텐다 버지레스 tene 다가 능신기 tene 람다 인다이 봐 tawa tela tene lamthi tina shinchi kugu yore ta gombati tene tela tene rebus chide tendesre te sonza ane tan dorna jumsen tenzula tene tene ngedöngi ka yin sagobe jumsen de tene ngone kta koran tanda ngomate teres.
So once again, the reason for saying that this particular teaching concerns absolute meaning is it concerns with the absolute view, which is being able to understand and therefore acknowledge how Buddha nature is one's inherent quality or inherent nature. And with that recognition and that understanding, then you have the view. And when you have the view, you have a path. And when you have the path, and that is based on the view, then you can actually experience fruition.
What in this retinity in do da norna tene dewarshik bege ningbo yobatere da ti indu da dewarshik bege ningbo ti dan rosimjen 탐제라 tendres yoba yena yang tene tanda ngarang cho tene da 출바 당 만출바 세야지기 yawa nisu yagobe 좀 텐데 데 가르레스제 베나다 데월식 번닝부 여신도라 단도 출바스제니 세고베 줌센당 마세베게 베나다 코와 통마 매버세야지 여러봐 코와 통마 매버세야티 줌센 강하라 데니스게 여르세나 데네 코로와 통마 매버스 다 초직네 데월식 번닝부 드심제 탐제를 여 초직네 코로와 통마 매버스제니 나란 수요게다 주난 장교 여레스 대답하고 코로와 통마 매버세야티 줌센 강한 송거 여르세나 다베는 당에 단듯마 라비아텔라 통마 매버세야티 문네 단다 가르세고레 마르크바 생에지 당부 산제 생에지 여 하고송아 산제 생에지 여니 데네 디 노네 데네 마 출대반다고지 하고송아 출네 데네 대양 가두 출마 출바 여바지라 데네 뒤수 시에주 매바지거든 뒤수 유릉부지 토네 데네 단다 코와 통마 매버스제네 장교 말이스 코로와 통마 매버스야도 좀 생각하시게 요르세나 베나 단다 가란조 출 마출 세야기 데네 세야 코로와 단양엘렌데바스 예와 체야디 조디 데워식베 닝부 대당 되네 대라 드버 체베게 드버 대니 되네 직다 타대든지 만들어 라고 요레스 하고서와 대손자 인도 아니 통마메 세고베 좀 센데 반은 출바 생에도 응어서 출주 여바지다 충계 여바지다 되네 코란 런신기 출바 임바지 이렇게 매발로 되는 통마메 버스잖아요 시작이요 그래서 되니 타대든지 만들어 출마 주 스타버에 잠시 마도 응어서 출바 매바 그래서 통마 매바 세고베 좀 센데 되레스
So now when we talk about how all beings, without exception, are endowed with inherent Buddha nature. Obviously, the issues that could be raised is, in the teachings we talk about how sentient beings, how beings are confused. There is confusion. And how we could become unconfused or become free of confusion. And which is, if we are potentially enlightened, have this undistorted nature, then how does the issue of being confused and becoming unconfused, possibility of becoming unconfused, go with that? So, possibility of contradiction. And then, more than that, it is also presented in the teachings how there is no beginning to samsara. Samsara is beginningless. And in that case, samsara or confusion, in that sense, is beginningless. How does that again go with inherently being enlightened or having such potential? The beginningless, from beginningless time. Firstly, when we talk about beginningless, it does not mean that at some point in time, in some incredibly remote past, we were all Buddhas or enlightened, and then that got obscured. But that has been since such a long time that we cannot measure or calculate really the time, and therefore beginningless. Firstly, it doesn't mean that once we were enlightened or recognized our potential fully. Beginningless samsara or beginningless confusion, and also inherently the endowed with the Buddha nature is simultaneous. It is simply beginningless or not is simply a matter of whether you recognize confusion and enlightenment as separate or sees there being no separation between confusion and between the potential of Buddha nature. It is a matter of whether seeing it separately or free of separation. So from that point of view, beginningless.
어텐데스 대 인도 대 손자다 간데레스나 베나 다 단다 출 만출 세야기 단다 예와 샤야지 여러봐 디 세야디 칸라 샤게 요르세나 tene tanda ngaran soke tanda ti konde nisun zimbeke tokpachi yorba korwa ta nyangelen zebeke nisun zimbeke tene kowar tang nyangelen deba re sambachi churba re manchurba re sambeke tene chur manchuki ta tokpachi yorba tokpa bhaja dele los churba chige churba jebas los churba kaya yormares dik kora ranke tene ti 대월식 벤닝보다 접고 요레스 대라 출바스 전에 딱 말에 대레 로스 주베게 주바 매바 송자 좀세 대라 때네 통마 매바스 코와 통마 매바스 세고베 좀센티 대레 마도 주바 생에지 여 간데스 주바 하마고 바체 간데스 가두 주바 하마고 바다 때네 주바 말레스 대송자 인도 당부 값을 다 들 된다 가요레스나 당부 값을 하고송아 대월식 벤닝보 코랑기 베나타 장시 팀에 고요만요와 데네 텔라 베나 장신기 오게 넘버 탁바 힘바 텔라 다 칸기 되고요 아 오게 장신기 넘버 탁바 힘바 다 텔라 베나 출만 저게 단다 예와 샤야티 단데기 단다 콘데 니슨 젬베기 똑바 깨징마티 코랑랑 텔라 출바시야고요레스 대인도 텔라 때네 tane bede thongma me seya jumsen tunda tisige yores.
So presently we have the notion of confusion, bewilderment, and free of confusion, confusionless. And when there is the dualistic fixation or the notion, samsaric existence of suffering, samsara, and nirvana, or the liberation, experience of peace, nirvana, the seeing of the two separate is confusion. Beyond that, there is no obscuration, or outside of that, there is no obscuration. Outside of that, there is no confusion.
Dorna, ngoshe, rangoshe matubal teneres, tandorna.
Seeing samsara and nirvana separate.
This is the concept of rangoshe matuba.
And which is another way of saying, there is no self-recognition, no experience of self-recognition, or the recognition of inherent nature of one's mind which pervades all experiences, all things. So the separation comes from not recognizing one's inherent nature. And with our experience of through our experience of conceptual thinking, any moment, the moment our thought is separation of samsara and nirvana, it's an obscuration. That is what obscures us. Any concept, any moment of concept where there is separation of samsara and nirvana, that is confusion. And so, from that point of view, samsara is beginningless. And because as far as Buddha nature is concerned, inherently undistorted, or unobscured. Nature essence is pure, inherently pure.
텐데스 진짜 통마 매버스 코아 통마 매버스도 있다. 너는 디스게 요리. 다 타마던 덴버스야지 요르바. 타마 통마 매제 타마 당 덴버스야지 요르바. 타마던 덴버스야 디 빼나 다 대답이고 통마 매버이나. 근데 타마던 덴스야도 좀세 가르스나 스르바다. 빼나다 통마 매버리 가르스 통마 매비 좀센디 통마 코라 빼나 출바세야 돼 출바 코랑 무슨 매버들 때는 통마던 데 통마 매버 스타버에 다오나 타마던 데 세고비 좀 센데 가르스나 타마던 데 세고야 좀 센디 빼나 대월식과 닝부 코란다 출바 코랑 게 차네 되네 타마스 전에 빼나 조 로주직 당 되네 된대게 차네 타마스 야버스면 타마스 야버 말레스 타마스야 돼 간세가 요르세나 샘 단다 나란수 출바티 샘 bana deworship semni deworship be ning busena yare rangsum jawe ning busena yare khaina te khora ngom mashipa bana soso ngom mashipa tela tene tela 출바 스타버에 te ngom namshebe ge kapsula tene teta karse 타데둔 짐베게 니순 짐베게 똑바트 te khorang ge ngala bana rangsinge 신도와 임바 손자 좀세 tela tene 타마단 데스파 타니 딱고 잠지레마도 ngö수게 tene 타다 데스 가야 요 말레스 베나 동알 텔러 때네 동알 때 시와 임바 손자 텔러 때네 타마단 데스 전에 타니 딱고 잠지레마도 ngö수 조주 여바치는 출발로 조주 여바치네 출발생에지 출발생에데 데네 손도 조주 여바치 때네 말레스 데 손자 타마단 데스 고야 좀 센터 된다 테레스
So the reason, therefore, the reason for beginningless time is because confusion has no inherent existence. Confusion lacks true existence. And when there is the dualistic outlook, simply that is referred as being confusion. But there is not some permanent thing that exists as confusion. And if there is some permanent thing that exists, then there would be beginning. Beginningless confusion doesn't exist at all from that point of view. And so now in the teachings we talk about while samsara is beginningless, but there is end to samsara. For beings, there is end to samsara. And so,
당부값을 라틸랍다. 타스류 코로웨게 코와도 타조로 그랬어요 말이에요. 코와라 타조주요 말이에요. 강게 타조고요서나 동얼기 타데텐데 조고요레스. 동얼디 코와 말이에요. 아고송아 코와세야디 니슨 좀 봐봐. 동얼디 티긴 레버로 봐. 디손도 동얼기 뉴인디 체고요레스.
So when we talk about there is end to samsara, so then if something is beginningless, if the question that goes in one's mind, if something is beginningless, that in itself says endless. And so, how is there is an end to it? Firstly, there is no end to samsara. Samsara meaning clinging, dualistic clinging. There is no end to dualistic clinging. But there is end to the fruition the result of dualistic clinging, which is suffering. So when we talk about there is end to samsara, is saying there is end to suffering. Not saying there is end to dualistic clinging. And then when we talk about there is end to samsara, in that context, becoming free of suffering is it is not because confusion has become exhausted. Confusion never existed. It is not to say confusion has exhausted. It is becoming liberated of dualistic fixation, and therefore whoever experiences liberation, or rather whoever experiences Buddha nature, there is self-liberation of dualistic clinging. And that self-liberation of dualistic clinging is freedom from suffering. And there is, as far as experience goes, there is end to suffering. So from that point of view, end. And so from communication, from labeling point of view.
어떻게です? 되는 뒷마체 백해 빼나 뒷마체 백해 빼나다 좀세 신다티 빼나다 될 때네 단다티 가서 오래 산지게 틀레티 가서 오래 죽토바 되네 야 게토바 간레스나 되네 단다 빼나다 단다 코 닌징기 되게 빼나 제단계 나란주 산지게 틀네 코란 랑신 흔줍 대월식 베닝부 코란게 랑신을 예바티 빼나 디 코란게 예 마토바 말때 되게 랑오 마시 바tam지 마체베 단다 짐바 되게 빼나티 다마 각바 매바 용토고요 말레스 대손산 인도 되네 델레 되네 빼나 저리온도 되네 코나스 동아게 균체 바tam지 마체 되네 대답에 산지게 틀네 연대 되니디 되네 랑신 손줍게 야 예토바 뭔도 줄토바 좀세 텔 때네 타마도 된바스 전에 샤고비 좀세 찍테레스 가고서
And another reason for saying that there is end to samsara, or suffering, is with regard to
근데 대신 닝보라 옛 되면 란체수여 봐. 코나 በት 가서 오래 두다 넘버 콘돌 코나 란신기 예대베 연대텐도 뭔서 줘 봐. 스타트 sommo가
with regard to manifesting of enlightened activity or Buddha activity, when we recognize Buddha nature, then and then along with that, when we manifest Buddha activity or enlightened activity or effortless, spontaneous enlightened activity, it is not because that when we recognized Buddha nature, we also developed these qualities, being able to spontaneously manifest Buddha activity. Buddha activity is also inherent. Just as Buddha nature is inherent, we are also inherently endowed with the Buddha activity. The outlook of dualistic outlook is what impedes, what obscures spontaneous manifestation of Buddha activity. And once we are liberated of dualistic outlook, then Buddha activity is spontaneous, and that is not a new development, but it is the nature and the inherent quality of Buddha nature.
텐데스레 테니 대인도 다 다나쇼게 됐음지체 다 너나 캐나조 다지 닝고 테네 통마메바 타마유베 그 코르텔라 테네 삼네 야고시다 쇼스다 고스나 다 단다트was
Okay, so His Eminence will
다 대역도 사슈드레스
His Eminence will stop here for now, and we'll have some questions. This afternoon, firstly, His Eminence would like, during these sessions of teachings, he feels it's appropriate that you have discussion groups. And for this afternoon, during the discussion group, the main point that he would like you to focus on is beginningless. When we say samsara is beginningless, what does it really mean? And yet there is end to samsara. This is one of the more complicated ones. And so he would like to you to reflect on that. Yes, please.
When you speak of views, the right views, the proper views, it seems it is not a mental view, like when you say all things are uncomplicated. It seems like the view is already the realization. And I'm trying to understand how we can have a view prior to the fruition of the view. If I could get the view down, it is like the understanding must be the realization. Or is there a kind of understanding we can have to practice with that is not yet realization?
당보 내추 고하다 똑바니 카레스 디케랑 게 딴데 야와체고레스 당보 단다 믹스에게 따와게 내로 디케랑 게 단다 고고요레스 거네 텔라 칼라 컨섬기 이세제게 예바다 마소네 니게요레스 이나에 디 똑바를 베스는 똑바 말레스 똑바티 곰바 코널 때네 되네 도구요레스 똑베 값을 레드 아니 따와게 내로 고다 마고 코랑 게 탈은 데베지 값을 레고요레스 그래서 디니 카가레스
따와.
베나 따와 양타 마다 게 탈은 데베지 고란치 고고요라 바 똑바생에데 카가라바스
Becoming informed and developing this knowing and experiencing what you know or what you become informed of is quite different. And one should be able to...
메나야 시키 고와당 시키 된 하고바당 된 매틱 하고와당 된 하고와당이 된데 소소레스 베나 당부 따웨게 톤에 하고야디 책점지게 톤이라 봐 이나야 디 도형디 고백에 잡아요 말마스 이나야 도형 고백에 시다마서나 되게 지고요레스
So, firstly, it should be quite clear that becoming informed, knowing and experiencing what you know is different. Or, in other words, knowing words' meaning, which is through the words, what you could know is communicated, and that's a word meaning. And knowing meaning, which is the experience of that is communicated through word meaning, is quite different. Through the aid of word meaning, becoming more informed and more informed, then you begin to have more confidence in what you know. And knowing well and becoming more confident, having more confidence at what you know, is beginning to have intellectual view, proper view. The experience of the knowledge must, for you to experience the knowledge, it can only happen through practice. Through practice, through whatever different meditative stages of practice. And when you have experience, you have the experience of the knowledge that is based on what you know, or based on the view that you know. When you have the experience, then the experience is beyond proper view or improper view, correct view or incorrect view. It would be beyond the concept of proper or improper view.
Bena chashana benda kena dongbani ko drabchi na dongbani ko bena ta dinde siktamji ko thone kena bena ta dongbani ko korl sheyon dinde re sambaji kena ge 가서 고래 이 샘게 토니 이신저 부지 갈라칸섬게 따동바 레샤 삼바지게 연구요 알아봤어. 얘나야 그냥 돈이 또 버려봤어. 돈이 또 말아봤어. 돈이 맞을 때는 따탄다 요 알아봤어. 대손자인데 뒤니다 가가라봤어.
So understanding and
얘나야
experience.
되게 돈이 또 베게 다 돈이 생에 되게 간데지 또 그거 요바 대또 버 제베 람데 간데 그거 요 되게 때데 팽겨 그랬어.
Understanding and experience, quite different. With regard to, for instance, emptiness, the view of emptiness, given you have become informed of the knowledge that concerns understanding the view of emptiness, and having understood to a certain degree a view of emptiness, and so you have this understanding where you say, so that's emptiness. You know, you have, based on your understanding, you could be saying to yourself, so that's emptiness. That in itself expresses a lack of experience of, that you could say that it is emptiness. While as far as your understanding of the view is concerned, you could say that, see. But from the experience point of view. And also another is, so okay, you have understood what is meant by emptiness, the view of emptiness, and with regard to your relationship to the world that you experience, based on that understanding, and you would also know you don't have the experience of that view. And so, that understanding the view is not experience of the view.
But it generates.
The
팽그레스. 팽그레스.
yes.
베나
It
칠라
helps.
파샤니 람티야 티팅도 로그 하고 물어봤어.
Yes, as His Eminence, of course, as His Eminence said, then the path must go on that.
Yeah.
Does the path help cut through the certainty of the confused view? In other words, from out of our confusion, we've developed a certainty of reality. Confused. Does practice cut that?
람텐데 serve.
Lam ten dai chik pe ren dos be ki je ten yor ban. Ten ta kan sur tube ki je. Ten tube den bati lam ten je to urves.
다 될 때는 람스게 어레스. 테레스.
Yes, because of that, the whole point of view calling it the path is that is the purpose.
So then that practice can be done without the proper view.
근데 드니 다고 그런 뜻은 근데 드니 그 다음에 맨날 도 슬람티
간전
문에 인테나 라
간전 그래서 나 남틸 때네
남텔라 때니 드니 다 간소를 대초백 때니 이제 여러분
이제 도그러 봤어 봐
이제 도그러 봤어 드니 다 레송으로 봐 근데 얘는 드니 다 초바 그당 초백 따와 치워 봐 초다 뒤에 토고 여나 드니 따왕문에 고고면 왔어
말했어 되네 남티게 트루베 따와 제 토발라
맞어
람코라 양타베 따와지 되네 람 양타베 고고요
맞어
람 양타베 따와 양타베 때네 용고요
When we talk about, firstly, when we talk about proper path, it's like that a proper path must be based on a proper view. So it's like it's taken as understood. Because if it isn't a proper path, then and that it couldn't have a proper view. See, so like if there isn't a proper view, then it couldn't be a proper path. See? So proper path expresses that there is a view, proper view. See? So when we talk about proper path, there's a combination of the proper view and the activity on that, based on that view.
빼나 캐나 팀하도 되네 람스네 람이 임바다 람마 임바 강기야와 책이 임바스
So otherwise, how would you discern whether it's the path or not?
람 양타고 임바다 마 임바
Or how would you discern whether it's the proper path or not? If saying there is certainty of confused belief, and so yet on talking about following the path, then if you are with that view, then how would you discern the path is proper or not? To say that whether the path will cut through.
너나 따왕 임바 제버 제발라 람 양타고지 고고요 람 양타바디 따와 양타바기 지세니 따왕 임바 쮸토 고고요
So in essence, in order to cut through confused belief, one must do it by following the path. You see? Following the path of practice. The path must be joined by the proper view. And
Do we get our first hint of the view through transmission before we understand it? And what brought us here? I mean, Buddhism didn't exist in America. Somehow, some of us heard something and have practiced for years, and maybe still don't understand the view.
대대견한테 말했어. 내게 섬야라. 견한주 상마 대용야디 돈다 상마데 남부산집에 따와를 때네. 되네 따와틀 때네 람도 곰바스전에 용브르 상분도스. 배나 람삼전에 있는 견한스는 룽박한지 놓았어. 줄은 라면도 놓았어. 되네 딘즈파샤네 배나 개와 두비야 딕바방에 간간 놓았어. 딘즈 간가샤네 가르세는 낭발 믹스는 남고야 가르세나 낭베기 케지 투모 많이 받아 따와서 버렸어. 따와를 때네 람다 데브사 버렸어.
No, His Eminence wouldn't agree with that. He strongly feels that the reason any of you or all of you are here is because of the Buddhist view. This is what he feels. If it is not for the Buddhist view, there are all kinds of paths. And as far as the path is concerned,
캐랑 라바나시르스 벽체 마당에 람 가제요.
la.
캐랑게 라바나신게 벽에 람데 마다르 코닝에 람 가제요레스.
I mean, even before, yes, just as you say, even before Buddhism came to America, there are all kinds of paths. There are all kinds of paths, see. And not only all kinds of paths, there is the encouragement, or there is stress on doing wholesome or virtuous things and
맞으면 답은 망고동 와서 난 거.
abandoning of harmful or non-virtuous actions, there are certainly not only paths, but there are similarities too. And His Eminence would like to think that the main reason that people are here at all is because the Buddhist path is based on a view. And that view is based on whatever is the fundamental nature of things, other than, as opposed to a preferred view.
That was my assumption. I was addressing what was the spark that encouraged us, gave us the inspiration to practice before we could even begin to understand the proper view, intellectually.
Tene senso 뭐지? 다방문에 야금하시 그문에 더 야초 진도에 같으니 강진이.
And was that,
좀
때 캐나 깨와 망부그 수능. 다 대이나 캐나 깨와 예매 그 수능기 초래스다.
In that case, then you also have the benefit, probably, of having acquaintance with the practice of the Dharma in previous times too.
제단 캐나 깨와 예매 그 따와 되었다.
So maybe you have previous lives view too.
바드랑신 그 따와 돼.
나
맨날 나도 대월식 변영부그 이해가 손다 랑신 그 따와 돼 여전 제브레스.
maybe because you have Buddha nature, you may have natural view.
야.
Key part of the argument was that samsara is beginningless because confusion of samsara lacks true existence. I'm having trouble understanding that because I don't know what it's contrasting to.
What?
I don't know what that's contrasting to. You say samsara lacks true existence. What has true existence? Nirvana? If that's true, then you've separated samsara and nirvana. So I don't understand.
senso 뭐지? tene korba trouble tene mo trouble yo maris. Mo temba trouble yo maris. Tene tichidu tene tenden kang tel tene ta thoma me basing tene ngos tene korba ta tene trouble yo maris. Temba trouble yo maris. Tene ona temba trouble yo ti takran ko atliya ti temba trouble yo maris te ti shol ya chik temba trouble yo teng temba chi ko jamen. Tene ta 영엘랜드 temba trouble.
단 된다 되레스. 코와 단 영엘랜드 버세야지 여러바스. 코와 단 영엘랜드 버세야디 강을 예와 콘데니스 치게 열었으나 대월싱베기 닝부기 내루도 또마도를 때네 콘데니스 치게 열었어. 대월싱베기 닝부기 내루디 가를 했으나 코랑경 어디 다시 겐가 내 숨다 타와드레스. 하고송아 겐가 내 숨다 타와. 하고송아 통마다 타마다 겐가 내 숨다 타와. 통다 겐가 내 숨다 타와. 손상 드레스. 다 대인도 다 가를 했으나 뭐시에 맛이 잠시 때는데 뭐시에 맛이 때 가를 했으나 단당에 더진라반난 신기 인증들이 대 손상인도 출발스 때는 로수 가면도 왔어. 그러왔을 때는 로수. 된다 들어봐다. 배나 코와 요마리 되네 냥을 내가 내가 주비어를 스케치 말아 봐. 근데 니 코란데 대월시고 니 코란 거 올 치게 열어 봐. 뭐시에 맛이 때네. 그때 그냥 고노 말다.
Maybe it's probably the way you maybe interpret in your mind. Firstly, the characteristic of Buddha nature is beyond the concept or the notion, beyond the notion of beginning or end or the existence.
디 코알라 치가 요마스 디식닝부 코란을 쓰게 요레스. 당부.
So when we are talking about samsara lacks true existence, we are talking from the point of view of Buddha nature. And as His Eminence said, that there is nothing that is separate, that is confusion. Seeing, having the mental outlook or the view that samsara and nirvana is separate is because of not recognizing Buddha nature. And with the experience of recognition of Buddha nature, then it liberates from the separation of samsara and nirvana. And so, it's not to say that because samsara lacks true existence, a permanent existence, that there must be something that truly exists. It is not to say that there is something else, because this one doesn't that doesn't say that something else truly exists.
베나 코와 단도나 코와 파까 아니냐는 데바 추 주바기 들었으게 요마레스.
Or if the interpretation could be you obstruct samsara, because samsara lacks true existence, and so you bring in nirvana. That is not the point, because samsara lacks true existence, therefore you bring in nirvana. Whether it's nirvana or samsara, the seeing it as separate, whether you see nirvana or you see samsara, seeing it separate in itself is confusion. And experiencing the inseparability of samsara and nirvana, which is experience of Buddha nature. So it's not like Buddha nature only pervades nirvana and not pervades samsara.
데스온단 도르나 디니 디 박차 코란 깨직 디 코란한 출바 인스게 요레스. 데스온단 디 박차 점지 레마도 뭐 속에 디요 말레스. 델라 출바스게 요르바.
And
근데 니순 젬베게 똑바 코란 박차 델라.
when we talk about samsara or confusion, we talk about the habit of dualism. And because of the habit of dualism, any thought that is triggered by this habit, so therefore the thought is a dualistic thought. That moment of dualistic thought is confusion. Free of that moment of thought of dualism is freedom from dualism too, self-liberation.
아직
I've been trying to understand today's talk in the context of the four dharmas. And therefore, when I get to the fourth dharma, I have a problem, perhaps only from the English translation, where it says, grant your blessings so that confusion may be transformed into wisdom. It seems to imply the separation or one thing becoming the other, confusion becoming wisdom. Does that mean enlightenment? Would it not be more proper to say, grant your blessings so that I might realize the inseparability of samsara?
다 싸웨게 데려봤어. 다 벽에 찍을 추바 이시수 차르스잖아 제버레스. 아니 인지게들 갈사 추바.
저 군수카시겠다 던데 트랜스폼스 자셔와 문에는 좀 수도티 샬티
제타 티인드 다치 코란 되어레스 추바 이시수 차스 추바 코란 이시수 차르스드 하고성아 디세 치 코란 들 때네 베나 추바 코란랑 이시 임발 땡겨레스
지금 요거
말에 책을 벽 책을 되어레스
However it is translated, the Tibetan word for there is,
다 다고르면지 코란 숭바대
as Gampopa himself had said, the final, the fourth one is Trulpa Yeshesu Char. So the term is Charwa. Charwa. Charwa has the meaning of Char is to sort of dawn upon, is to dawn. Char simply is it's you.
추바 코란 이시수 차르스
You're seeing Chara has the meaning, Yeshe, wisdom, absolute wisdom, is that you see the confusion as wisdom. That is the meaning. That it doesn't have to be, the confusion has to become something or go somewhere else and something else. That you see the confusion itself as wisdom.
추바 코란 그 어디 이시수 차르 너나 다til랍다
Or then seeing the essence of confusion as wisdom.
디세연데 베나 가르에서나 야 추바 이시수 차르스야 돼 책들 고아체메요 그냥 단단한시 니수메세나 당부 니수 예바도 니수메바시 통고고 동아스 추바 이시수 차르스데 코란텔 책네 베시다요 그래서
The words are very meaningful here, and they give a kind of meaning that
베다 란싱게 차르주 예바치 책이요 그래서
it's naturally arising, natural. It's you acknowledge what is naturally so. No, from that point of view, and. If we bring in what you are saying, then there could be also, again, problem, because when we talk about inseparability, see, we talk about the nature is inseparable, but if it get interpreted as that there are two separate things that have been put together and therefore inseparable, that would also be totally wrong. Because when we talk about inseparable, that's simply the nature, rather than having been put together.
Yeah.
Okay, the last question, please.
뭐 지기였습니다.
Your Eminence, yesterday in speaking about the view of Buddha nature, you said the emptiness nature, I'm not sure if I understood you or not, but I thought you said that the emptiness nature of Buddha nature is not a simple total negation, because you still allow for the interdependent arising of phenomena. Is there any other reason why it's not a simple negation, or is that the only reason?
데스도 되네 고동바세야 돼 타지도 깎고 말했어.
타지 그래서 그래 똥밭장발이야. 되네 말이 되네 뻔나. 텐데다
데스도 되네 간서 그 타면
되는 다디 똥밭장바 되는 멤버 티스라. 좀 센트 되네 텐델 때 봐. 당 되는 메뉴 다 간서 그래 시간스 되네 똥발 되네 차르서 뭐 차네 되니일 되네. 세고 송으로만. 대주도 chen 좀 세셔봐 요르다 메뉴다 텐델 때 잠때는 똥밭지 보는 것 같았어.
데레 스탠더 잠지 스탠더 세야 돼 된다 데려봤어. 배나 여되는 델라 때네 된 론주 쪽부터 주베 코스 전에 배나다 가서 산지 그 론주 쪽부터 고다 주베 코스 전에 산지 그 전에 탐지에 될 때는 연구고 열어봤어. 산지 그 이시다 산지 그 전에도 탐지 그 잘만가 될 때는 시작하고 열어 론구 주고 간 같은 데 연구고.
너는스 인틴자 되네.
뒷담지가 된다다 가서 댄드 잠지를 해야지 뒷담지 말이다.
댄데가 만져 가면 매우 찬.
아,
댄데가 만져 가면 매우 찬.
대레라 마체베다 콩담아서는 강가 용서 되네 용거로 단단 감도 강가 제대야 된도 강가 기부다는데 강가 되네를 봐. 말해.
뒤쪽으로
안지 기부다는데 약간 그 짤만 가볼 때는 시작해요. 그래서 얘네 땅다데 신기요 말해. 참참 욕도 용도.
I'll do my best.
내가 약살 때는 롱고 두고 된도 강가. 되는 제단 같은 직된 거 돈에 샤브 있는 된도 강가 짤만 가볼 때는 용고요. 그래서 뜻 약고 치셔야 나와도 망가봐도 힘받이. 슬고
네.
나온 된도 강가 될 때는 용고요. 그래서 기부다야. 때스 당당 너도 땡안 때 참참 고be 욕도 용.
Gan, ton. Yes. Firstly, emptiness, when we talk about emptiness, when we talk about emptiness, emptiness is not simply saying, material empty. That things, materially things don't exist, they're empty. That would be just simply nihilistic point of view. But the emptiness is more than that. And the best example for that is, for emptiness is because of interdependent nature or dependent arising nature of things, therefore emptiness. And so, and when you say, is that all? And that's like saying you're only looking at one thing that is existing interdependently or, dissolving because of interdependent or rising because of interdependent. There's nothing that is not pervaded by interdependence. You see. So, and therefore...
나 거와도 양해는 되면 니가 랜드기 중에 랜드기 타고 가래서.
And samsara and nirvana are expression of interdependence altogether, interdependently arising. So in that way, again, as His Eminence mentioned yesterday, when we talk about interdependent, dependent, it is not just talking about something, becoming non-existent or dissolving. The arising of things come because of interdependent cause and conditions of thought. And the enlightened manifestation of enlightened activities of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, for instance, the expression of Sambhogakayas, the Nirmanakayas, the arising of Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya is also interdependent, arising from the all-encompassing Dharmakaya, or the emptiness, Dharmakaya, which is emptiness. And so the Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya is therefore the activity of the self-play or activity of Dharmakaya. And the
다 다그베게 나와 차샤바이나 텐데레스. 근데 마다그베 차네 샤바이나 근데 동번 일을 때네 텐데 두간간 게 열었음 다징에 했어.
So from the point of view of pure outlook, then Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya takes place, the arising because of interdependence. And then from the point of view of impure outlook, on the level of impure outlook, then samsara exists interdependently. Every activity. It is because of impermanence. It's the activity of impermanence that allows the arising of phenomena. It is the characteristic of emptiness that allows that can affect arising of phenomena. You see, and so therefore there is the possibility of enjoying unobstructed arising. Actually, it's happening here too. You know, possibility of enjoying unobstructed arising. But sometimes
배낭 가란 속에 딜랍다. 사게요래, 통게요래, 녀게요래, 강바, 텐주 강가, 집어다야 텐주 강가. 추고 동번 이거 잘 레샤 되게요래 마도 신다 가야 말이스. 세상 나와도 trouble 말이야. 이내 배주도 안 담미신다 탐던 추게요. 다가랑 발주다.
So the fact that we can sleep and eat and talk and so forth, we can enjoy all of these is because of emptiness nature of all things, or the dharmakaya or emptiness nature of all things. And so perception is not a problem, you see. Perception is not an obstacle, you see. And but sometimes we don't know how to enjoy because we don't know how to perceive. So, but everything is available, unobstructed. And at least that's how His Eminence feels.
The reason I was asking that is I sort of wanted to get to asking about the interdependent arising and how that is not a total negation. Because if all there is the interdependent arising, all the elements.
How that is not what negation? What?
How that, see, my understanding, I can't understand how that's not a simple negation because all the elements that are interdependent can be negated. If you can negate each of the elements, then you can negate the interdependent, then you can say interdependent arising is a negation. But he's saying that it's not a negation.
I tell you, I don't understand what you're saying.
If interdependent arising means that you have a lot of elements coming arising together, right?
Or because of interdependence things.
Right. Say the body is the result of a lot of elements coming together. Right?
Mm-hmm.
If each one of the elements can be negated,
How?
because each one of the elements doesn't have any existence, it's dependent on things coming together. And each of those things is dependent on things coming together.
So?
You see what I mean? So that there's, as he says, there's no inherent existence.
No inherent existence, yes.
So if there's no inherent existence, that would seem to be a total negation.
Negation of what?
Well, a negation of existence. In other words, it seems to be saying this, that nothing exists. And that experience as existing is just due to perception.
가서. 뭐야, 다들
산이 좀 왔어.
다들 지시도 그냥 독스지스. 다들 주술링도.
직 드네 레레레 신드라. 두덴다 카이네 드즈레레레 신드야. 드네 파카르샤바 있는 드네 틸 트바요 마르바스. 코란 칸 드네 랑크 트바요 마르 드즈 상마 좀네야 체브리스르바. 드네 드네 다 텍스체도 텐데 인도 따르레레 신도 가르노 카인 트바요 마르 딜텐 드네 상마 용도야 용티 레레레 때니야 좀 인상. 좋아? 드네 용을 트바요 마르 텐데 인상 드네 다 커바 트바 용상 마르스. 대다 단단한 용신도 진짜네. 그냥 용신을 가르마 좀 여봐.
다티지시도
용티고로 단다.
티티시도 그냥 때지 되는 고함이 보레스.
노세.
티 인도 건 갈리게시 때 주술링도.
노세.
다티 멤버 콘스 좋아했다 안주다.
노세. 나
좋아직도 안주다.
저 타마 제시. 어떤 주주 지금 요사서.
그래.
노세.
티톡스랍다 코란 티레스.
노세.
단데 캐나 세븐은 실 코란 라노 소수 ngol 때네 란시 주바요 말레스. 때 주바 매 신도라. 되는 가이나 양 코란 가스고래 빼나 다 직도 난 토바지 동안 스티닝 각과 매버티 호텔에서 단 두두시 파스.
Maybe you need to explore the subject further, but everything existing interdependently, meaning, of course, that nothing exists permanently independently on its own. And nothing existing permanently and independently on its own doesn't obstruct from things existing interdependently. Doesn't obstruct things existing interdependently. So there is no contradiction. While things inherently lack true existence, yet they can independently arise, or exist in that sense. But interdependently arising and existing is not in contradiction of their inherent lacking true existence.
그래서 나 걔한테서 딱지단다 하고.
So if you examine and reflect on it a little bit more.
야, 되네 다 동원간서 좋아만 동원단도.
나.
동원.
So we will have more opportunity for questions this afternoon.
아니 산이네 주도 주발라. 나도 주도 시에나 야군도.
Namaste. Namaste. Namaste.
매티 단다. 예스 도스 주반이 제.
So since we have quite a big subject, His Eminence feels it would be more appropriate opportunity for more maybe discussion, for more teaching. From tomorrow onwards, we will start the teachings at 10 o'clock. So sitting practice from 9 to 10, and then starting the teaching at 10 o'clock.